Baehr Carroll, welcome to my little studio here. Moms and Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a great mom. What did she try to do for Christmas?
Yeah, my mom was one of my favorite people, and she had a lot of great traditions. And one thing my parents do on every big and small holiday is have a party. It's got to be a big party. And my mom always had this thing where she was using real plates, and she would make the food for everybody, and it would be a party of like 80 people, and they would all come over to her house, and she would give them on the real plates. She made sure it was the real plates. She said, no plastic. And so she loved, Christmas parties. She loved, every type of party, even on Veterans Day, like she would have a party, I promise you. But we also had some other really fun traditions that my family have, taken part in now with my little children. To do this thing called Kris Kringle, instead of saying Secret Santa or Santa, to do it more about Kris Kringle, and to say, it's kind of the premise of the Secret Santa thing where you have someone that you've picked and you have to give them the gift, but their little stick was we had to be nice to each other. So you had to be nice to the person, and it was a secret. So essentially everybody had to be nice to everybody so that the secret was kept. So I think it was just a thing, my parents wanted to do so that we looked like we all loved each other during that holiday time.
And with 3 brothers, was that a difficult thing sometimes?
Yeah, it was funny. And when you got in fights, it was like, I know you're not my Kris Kringle. And so I've done this with my kids, and it's a really sweet thing.
So party, celebration, hospitality, authenticity, is that what you try in your preparations? Because I'm sure things get hectic, especially once December starts.
Yeah, I love those things. I watched my mom doing those hospitality things, and this month, essentially 3 big things. And so, I love doing it, and I saw her being such a natural at it and welcoming people into our, house for dinner, around a meal, and, talking about different things. You can never talk about movies, though, because that's too personal, what movies you liked. But, I think that's a really special thing to bring people together.
What does that do for a child's psyche as they grow up, being a part of that?
I think it was a great thing growing up a part of that, because my parents, when they first started Movieguide, instead of spending money at a restaurant, because we were just starting out, we were a nonprofit, my dad needed to save some money or whatever, he would say, oh, come to my house. And so he would call up my mom and be like, I just invited this person to our house.
Or 40 people to my house.
Yeah. And so he would have the meeting with the person at the office, and then he said, oh, honey, we're going over for dinner. And we would all run around the house trying to clean up. And then she'd make this, wonderful meal, and we would all sit around the table, and, they always included the kids. That was one of my things my dad was really big about, is always including the kids around the table, around the big table, so that the kids learned from these people that were coming to meet with my dad, who were from all over. There'd be missionaries from Africa and all these different types of people. And, my dad, I know you're like that too. You like to tell people, get people together and connect them. But I thought that was such a great thing as a child to learn from people's different experiences and different places. And, then you learn that we all, in humanity, we all need the same things. We need love and comfort. And so I thought that was a great, thing. And I really want to, I'm trying to do that with my own children, include them in the dinner table, include them with all different ages. And I would say, thus far they have friends of all different ages, and, learning from them, and, different opinions besides their parents, right? Because sometimes they hear, faith from other people. Maybe they take it in a little bit more, right? than just hearing from their parents, or you got to do it this way, right? And, learn kind of a different, experience, but the same common faith.
And you have an 8-year-old. How did that happen?
Yeah, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
But I remember you before any of that.
Yeah.
It just seems like no time has passed at all. In the moment, it might seem like forever, like a sleepless night, but I mean, are you getting a little wiser at how fast things are going right now, and more intentional about not the materialist, conspicuous consumption? I mean, that's got to be hard these days, especially with things like this in people's lives.
I know, and that's one thing I'm trying to, teach my children is one of the movies that came out recently, Jeremy and I don't really want them to be watching, but it's really big. It's like a movie that is really all the trends, people dressed up at Halloween, this character. And I'm trying to tell my older daughter, the 8-year-old and the 5-year-old, like, it's okay to not follow trends. Like, we can be confident in what we believe, and we can, be excited about that, and the trend, honestly, the trend's going to end in maybe a month, right? Or half a year. And then people are going to move on to the next thing. And maybe that'll be more of something that'll, be a better program for you to watch and to be fostered with and learn great characters through instead of this other. And the other thing that my father and my mom, I believe, that I want to take on with my husband is to have the children kind of make the decisions on their own. And so, like, presenting, what was in this movie and what happened in this movie. And then, like, how do you think that would make you feel? How, you deal, you're sensitive to things. Do you think you would be scared of that? You know what I mean? And so then they say, oh yeah, I see what you mean. Not just saying, oh, you can't watch that, or, oh, you can't do that thing. Like, kind of explaining, like, how you would feel if you did that. You know what I mean? And so not just, putting a barrier there, kind of opening up the conversation more and, hoping. That's one of the big things. I know I was very comfortable with my mom on open conversation and felt like I could bring to her anything and talk it through with her. So that's one really big thing I want my children to be able to do with me.
What advice would you give to a woman who's pregnant and going to deliver in December?
I kind of always give this advice. I know it's a little random, but they always say, oh, your child should be, breastfeeding perfectly. Then at 6 months, they should be crawling. And then at a year, you should be walking and all this stuff. And the parent has a lot of stress on them, the first kid, the second kid, all the kids, because they feel like they have to be hitting these milestones. But, most of the time the kid will work it out, like, it'll happen. And I know you're reading something online to say, oh, we have to do this, or you're going to the doctor, but, like, it'll happen. And you're there. If you spend a lot of quality time with your kid, you'll help them foster through, like, the talking and those kind of things. And so don't kind of worry about those things. Like, it'll get sorted. And then at a certain time, if it's really something you need to go see someone at, like, it'll present itself and it'll get worked out. But it's so easy nowadays with the cell phone to get worried about those things, and to see, oh, so-and-so's already walking, or so-and-so's baby, and it'll all work out.
I didn't ask you at the time, but you guys came pretty close to a fire. What was going through your mind as a mom? Yeah,
that was so really crazy. The fire came to our backyard and then veered away. And even the fireman came to our house a few days later over there, and he said, oh, this is like a miracle. He even said it was a miracle that the fire didn't hit your house. And that house is the home that I grew up in. It was like my childhood home. And my mom, was there, and that was her house. And she actually passed in the house. So there's a lot of, like, meaning to that house. And so, and sentimental value. And so that was crazy that,
frightening.
Yeah, the house, it was like just the weirdest kind of day, right? Because all your information is just from the app and finding out when the firefighters are there, but it wasn't updating on my little portion of the house. And so we're like, oh no. And we're watching the news, and, like, the news is saying the street over, like, the house is burning, and they're showing it to you. So, like, I definitely had moments that day that I just broke down and, prayed. And so it worked out that the house was still there, but you do remember, like, our family is, like, the key, right? Like, just having us all together and safe was, like, so the key in there.
So one of our core principles is blessed to be a blessing. And there's probably people who lost everything. What could we do this Christmas in a personal way? I mean, we can write a check, but are there other things we can do in a more personal way to give somebody?
I don't know. I mean, what I did is, because what happened here was that we had our fires November 6th, which was actually my mom's birthday. It was a really crazy day. And then in January 6th, they had the fires in LA. And so I had a lot of friends in that fire as well. And so I just kept reaching out to them, like, oh, do you need any advice on how to deal with the insurance? Do you need any kind of more practical ways that we were talking? And, like, also, like, if you've ever been, it's kind of like a thing of grief. If you've ever been through grief, reaching out to someone, being like, I know how it feels, right? That always makes you feel even better if someone understands your circumstance so I know how it feels, or, relating to them in some way, and just being like a listening ear, I feel like is very helpful to people, and just being there for them.
So 2 girls and a boy. Any differences you've noticed?
The boy, oh my goodness. My boy is really sweet, and he's a mama's boy. Like, he always wants to be with me, and I have this really special connection with him. He is really funny though, because he picked up a tree branch or something that had fallen on the ground, and he starts doing a sword movement, and I'm like, well, I never saw anything about fighting. I don't know how he knew this, because he doesn't watch a lot of content at all, and so how does he even get this? I don't understand. He saw
an X and a Y. There's an X and a Y.
Yeah, so I had a coloring book on Spider-Man that we had already had from something, and he saw it, and he fell in love with Spider-Man before he even watched the program. I'm like, how? I don't understand. But so I think that's really interesting. Just how he likes to play is different than the girls. But it's been really fun to have, both.
So 2 more things. You've interviewed thousands of folks here. What's the difference between an authentic and a fake when it comes to celebrities?
I think we go to these events, and they're already very limited on who's there, and you have to go through security to get in there. You're invite only, like they know that you're a journalist, or they know you're in the industry, and that's why you should be there. And then some people still have their walls up, and they have like their own security right next to them. Maybe maybe they're just feeling maybe they feel uncomfortable, or they're. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting situation. But I think what I found, like, I interviewed Hugh Jackman, and he was extremely like polite, and he was like asking me questions, and I was like, that's so nice. Like, he was, interested in someone beyond himself, right? And so I felt like that was very genuine, to like take interest in people. But you have to. Since I kind of grew up in this world with my father and then my grandparents on Broadway and Hollywood, it was like I kind of knew that people were people. Like, take them for who they are, and if you meet them, like, I don't kind of put on an air. Like, you just talk to them as if we were talking, right? You just have a conversation, and you don't, kind of worry about that, because they, like I was saying before, like, they have the same needs as everybody. They need love and security and wish for family and all those kind of things that we do. So, yeah.
I kind of tend to think of all life as junior high. Everybody is neurotic, and does anybody like me? And do I have a place here? So finally, you live in a world that is, personal, and you guard that fiercely, but you also live in the media world of Hollywood. Are there things that you want to do here to both nurture and protect, but also prepare them for the bigger world? Or how are you getting
with my children?
Yeah,
I think you're right. That's such a conversation that we have, especially since like the world is in your hands with your cell phones. And so I'm constantly like monitoring, like, and we're putting on Movieguide, like how social media is affecting girls, how social media is affecting kids. And there's so much, because it's way more even than I was a child. And so it's something I'm very mindful of. And I love that they're now making things like the dumb phones, or like the landline phones. If you've seen those, it's like, oh, we're going back to that. But it's a wonderful thing, because it's the kids, I don't want them to not have, the joy of communicating with people, right? But you want to like protect them. So it is always that question, like, how much do we do on that? But, I am tempted by those kind of have you seen that tin can one where it's like literally a landline, and you're like, the kids are talking, and I kind of love that idea. And so, that's something I think about all the time, me and my husband, and, we research, and I read all the articles that we put out at Movieguide on it. And so, I think it's a very big conversation. And I think going back to the topic of like, talking to your child about those things and talking to them and spending the quality time with them and, really getting to think like hear what they have to say about things and trying to navigate it all, through that and hoping that they're open about it so that you can talk about something that they may have accidentally saw or like heard or whatever.
Okay, bullet round. Favorite Christmas hymn?
I love Come Thou Fount, but I don't know if that's not a
Da, da, da,
not really a
sure. We'll make it a Christmas thing.
Silent Night,
Turkey or ham?
Turkey.
Red or green?
Red.
Christmas open and presents morning or night?
Morning.
Last thing you want to hear on Christmas Eve?
Last thing?
Yeah, the last thing you want to hear.
Oh, like don't want to hear actually? I don't want to hear, I don't like this food. I don't like the gravy. What?
Okay, last thing you do want to hear.
The joy, the laughter,
Okay.
and the dance. I want to see them dancing. They love to dance and the joy.
Oh,
And, yeah.
Well, you have a glitter in your eye and a beautiful family. God bless you, Evy.
Thank you so
Baehr
much.
Carroll. Thank you.